Open the floodgates, people, because as part of his weekly headline segment for Hockey Night in Canada, Elliot Friedman reported that the Toronto Maple Leafs have begun the process of selling. Brad Treliving had initiated dialogue with teams around the NHL to, quote-unquote, see what's available to them. With this in mind, there are a number of guys on the Maple Leafs roster that I do think are worth talking about in the context of the Detroit Red Wings. We're going to be referring to this article posted on InsideTheRink.com. Honestly, I'm not too familiar with this website. I'm not too familiar with the writer here, Alexander de Berardinis, but there were a few interesting trade scenarios proposed between Toronto and Detroit, featuring some players that I think actually would benefit what it is the Wings have right now. The article talks about the rivalry. These guys are actually bitter rivals in the National Hockey League. However, they could be starting to look more like a perfect partnership. After the Wings swept the Maple Leafs out of the season, there has become too much ground to make up, and the Leafs are functionally out of the race. With that, the Maple Leafs are going to have to look to sell some assets, be it major or minor. They will no doubt have the intention of picking up future assets. Now, what team has a metric ton of futures that they'd be willing to part with? That's right, the Detroit Red Wings. The article dives into a number of players that could be moved around, a number of guys that make sense for either side, but there is a mock trade, or two, or even three or four, that is written about here, and I wanted to dive into some of these names first and foremost. So, first, mock trade is for Simon Benoit. The Detroit Red Wings getting themselves another Simon in their organization. They obviously have one in Simon Edvinsson. Benoit also happens to be a left-handed defenseman. 27 years old, 6'4", 209, left-handed D, and he's got 3 points in 47 games played this season, on pace for about 5 points. Benoit was never a top-tier point producer, neither with the Leafs nor with the Anaheim Ducks, but what he does provide is stability, defensive acumen. He's got a big body, he's got shot-blocking ability, he's got physicality. There's a lot to like out of Simon Benoit if you're looking for very particular skills. But Benoit as a whole is a guy whose contract goes on till the end of 2027, so Stevie Y, if you're worrying about term, if you're worrying about guys' contracts expiring and then just leaving, this isn't one of those situations. He's cheap, he's a big body on the left, he can play nice minutes. Going over to his game log, he hasn't really been given more than 18 minutes a game this season, it seems, but if you're getting somebody to establish a nice bottom pair, give Albert Johansson a little bit more leeway, maybe Simon Benoit is a reasonable target, at the very least whilst Simon Edvinsson is out. The article talks about Simon Benoit and Carter Mazur potentially being swapped around in a deal. Mazur and a second for Benoit. The writer here says they put this one in a piece not too long ago. Benoit really fits the profile of what Detroit wants. A big body who is physical and plays both sides. He could form a really solid third pair next to Axel Sandin Pellikka. He's also very cheap and still on the right side of 30. Detroit gets a season and a half of a cost-controlled, physical defenseman who gives Detroit the bite they need for the postseason and the presence they need alongside of ASP. I know the Maple Leafs fans love this guy, and I get why. The fights and the hits are great to see. But truthfully, I think Leafs fans would like Mazur a lot more. Seeing as they love Scott Laughton, they'd love a high-motor and offensive upside guy like Mazur. He isn't likely to see much of a chance in Detroit in the future. Bear, Genborg, and Brandstad Newgard all have a similar profile with far more upside. Not to mention, the Maple Leafs add another early-round pick, which will go a long way for this team. Now honestly, I do think Carter Mazur is just a recipient of some pretty bad luck. This guy probably would have been a Red Wing for at least a little bit longer if he just was able to stay healthy. This season, he's gotten himself 6 points in 5 Grand Rapids Griffins games, so again, He's only played 5 games all year. Like, he has not been healthy. He played at the beginning of the season. He hasn't played since. Carter Mazur is unfortunately not an option that you can project into anything really over the next few weeks. But long term, I do think this is a guy that has a decent amount of potential to become something. It's just, I don't know if in my heart of hearts I'd say I'm ready to give up on him. Good point, though. Ginborg, Bear, Brandsteg Newgard, these guys all have very similar styles of play, you can say. But Carter Mazur still is a valuable piece. I think my reticence towards trading him away can already indicate the level of value that he might have in some sort of a Simon Benoit trade. But going back over into the article, there is a second mock trade that I do think is worth talking about. The Maple Leafs would receive a 2026 second-round pick, and the Red Wings would receive Max Domi. I don't think this is the most likely deal, the writer writes, but I could see why Detroit would like it. Max Domi plays the style that Yzerman loves, with a bit of extra bite this team needs down the lineup. I could see him fitting in alongside any of the names in the bottom 6, as well as being a candidate to rise up in case of injury. Domi is also a playoff riser, scoring over half a point per game in the playoffs in his career. If there aren't any big names on the board, I could see Detroit getting savvy with a move like this. For Toronto, it's simple. You remove a body from the lineup in place of a future asset. When healthy, Toronto has plenty of wingers who can play a gritty style. Domi is a good culture guy, but Toronto isn't going to be in need of that, at least not this season. Max Domi is 30 years old, 5'10", 207, signed on to the end of 2028, making $3.75 million a year against the Leafs cap. Pretty good cap hit, honestly, for a guy who, in previous campaigns, has put up as much as 70 points, although I'd refrain from expecting that out of him on any new team at this stage. He's been a 30, 40-point guy most seasons. This year he's on pace for 46 points. And then 2 seasons ago with the Dallas Stars, he was absolutely electric. 13 points in 19 games over there. Excuse me, that was 3 seasons ago. The past 2 years, though, for Max Domi have been pretty good in terms of playoff point production. 7 points in 13 games last year, 4 points in 7 the year before that, on top of 118 penalty minutes in the regular season. Max Domi, make no mistake about it, is an agitator who can score some pretty nifty goals. When he decides to shoot, that is. He's very good at playmaking, he's got good passing ability, and he's got good awareness, not to mention a shiftiness and a dog-like quality that makes him a fan favorite wherever he goes. There's a reason why Max Domi is always finding NHL jobs. From Arizona to Montreal, Columbus, Carolina, Chicago, Dallas, and inevitably Toronto, this is a guy who becomes the ultimate playoff rental, and somebody who always seems to step up in those moments. The Red Wings, if they can get him for a second, I'd honestly think that's pretty good. I don't think he should be the only guy the Red Wings should go out there and target, but having Domi's name in the winged wheel actually makes sense to me. Now, there are some other mock trades here that we can dive into, Jake McCabe and William Nylander, but ultimately, I wanted to focus on these 2 guys the most, Simon Benoit and Max Domi. They make a lot of sense in my mind. My question is, do they make sense in yours? Do you like these players? Do you like these trade ideas? What do you think about a second-round pick or anything else like that? Heading over back to Toronto, if you're a Maple Leafs fan, what do you think about these prices? Are they appropriate? Are they too much? Do you want more? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.